Welcome to Hot Takes with Cheddar Chaz, where there's no hand holding. We deal with facts on emotion. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification if you haven't already. Shout out to everybody who's been riding with me this whole season. It's been peaks and valleys. It's been tumultuous. You know what I'm saying? But if you watch this show, you were prepared for, a lot of the bad stuff. Some of the good stuff I prepared you for too. But for a lot of the bad stuff, you were prepared if you listen to Cheddar Chaz. I just want to thank y'all for riding with me, man. It's been good. Even the detractors, I want to thank you for still clicking on my face and watching the video anyway. Hate views count too. And I also want to thank the new people who come aboard and now I guess it's the word abreast of the channel and of the show. And I want to welcome you aboard. This is not like other shows. We're pretty pretty harsh here, pretty hardcore. You know what I'm saying? We ain't cutting no corners. So this is going to be a multi-episode, if that makes sense. It's going to be broken up into several pieces. This is your off-season primer. Things that have gone through my mind, ideas I've had, even dating back to before the season, unfortunately or fortunately, ended the way it did, depending on how you think about things, right? I'm going to come right out the gate, pause. I want to talk about Buddy Hield, right? Buddy Hield, I think he would be an incredible acquisition for this team. Plays a very modern brand of basketball. We all know Buddy Hield's an incredible shooter, has been an incredible shooter since he was in New Orleans. We traded him for Boogie Cousins. It was the right move. It didn't work out for the Pelicans in the long run because Boogie got hurt. Need to get Boogie back also. But, it was an incredible draft pick for the Pelicans. Buddy Hield went on to have a really, really good career. That draft was a really good draft in hindsight. But I think he's going to be available. He's an expiring contract. I believe his salary is around $19 million. I think that's really easy for the Pelicans to match. But there does come a major question if you do decide to pursue a Buddy Hield. Now, do you pursue Buddy Hield as an individual, or do you try to get Buddy Hield and Miles Turner a la the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Prior to them moving on and getting Russell Westbrook. Shout out to Russ. But yeah, do you try to pursue those two as a tandem? Then things become a little more tricky. The problem comes in with matching salary. Buddy Hield's at 19. I believe Miles Turner's going to be in his 20s. That becomes an issue. I have said before, the Pelicans have about $47 million in tradable salary without breaking up the core this offseason. Now, that's tremendous. But again, $10 million of that is Larry Nance. So I just can't foresee this team moving Larry Nance, even if it may be the best move. So Larry Nance's his health is kind of, betraying him at this point. But I can't see this team moving off of Larry Nance just because of his leadership and how well he did play when he was healthy. Larry Nance played very well to start the season. Credit to him. So that's when things become a little more dicey, because even if you do package all of that, that salary together and you go try to get a Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, if Miles Turner is even still available, which I think he may be available. I think it may be something like the Raptors like to do. They like to sign their guys to their extensions. That way they hold on to the asset. You may see the Pelicans do that with Jackson Hayes as well. But yeah, I think things get a little more difficult when you have to piece all that salary together to go get those two guys. Now, where things do work out at is that, again, Buddy Hield, you can either sign him to an extension or he will be a $19 million salary that you can package maybe with some other salary if another big move becomes available at the deadline. But I think you need to go into this season with Buddy Hield. Whether you have Miles Turner or not, you need to go into this season with Buddy Hield. I think his shooting, his ability to shoot off the dribble, catch and shoot, etc. He's a veteran. He's comfortable playing off of the bench. I don't care about his defense. I'm not worried about that. I think you need a player who, plays a modern brand of basketball. And I think Buddy Hield is the perfect complementary player for that. So again, $19 million, depending on, what their plans are with Miles Turner, how they view JV. JV is a $15 million expiring salary. Depending on how they view JV, maybe they view him the same way you view Buddy Hield, as like an aspiring that they can repackage at the deadline. Or if they plan on moving Miles Turner, they can extend JV. JV is still a very reliable player, healthy, Iron Man, great offensive player, top 10 offensive player in the NBA, offensive center in the NBA. He's a top 10 offensive center in the NBA. no matter what happens, I'm not going to say that. Unless the Pelicans pick jumps into the top 5, which I highly doubt, but unless that pick jumps into the top 5, there's no reason for the Pelicans to make a draft pick this year. All right, hold up. All right, I'll say this. If Scoot Henderson gets arrested, right? If Scoot Henderson gets caught stealing motherfucking 100-gram bar out Rouse's or something, just doing some silly shit, and he gets arrested and his stock drops and he drops to like 12 or something like that, then yeah, Pelicans, you go ahead, you make that pick. But aside from that, dude, the Pelicans have no reason to make a pick in this year's draft. You fucked up by drafting Dyson Daniels. It was an abysmal pick. I told you not to do it. We was live covering the draft, and I told you not to do it. You still didn't listen. Now, that 8th pick, which could have been moved for a nice, reliable player, Kevin Huerter type player, or even a better player than that, maybe you move that 8th pick for a couple of guys. Maybe you already have Gary Trent Jr. and Chris Boucher or whoever. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you have a couple of guys with that 8th pick in salary. But no, you kept the pick. You decided to try to, repeat what you did with Herb Jones, and you drafted Dyson Daniels, and you failed. Now, moving forward, you can't afford to waste any more first-round picks. Like, you can't afford to do it. You failed with Kyra Lewis. You failed with Jackson Hayes. And I'm not even going to say that those players have failed. I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to say organizationally, you failed to identify, draft, hone, and develop those players. Because I think Jackson Hayes goes somewhere else with a good point guard, and he's going to be a hell of a player. I really believe that. That's how gifted athletically I think he is. Kyra Lewis, I think Kyra Lewis goes somewhere, gets a fair shot, and I think he's going to be a solid player. You know what I'm saying? I really do. But I think organizationally, you don't have the skill set to evaluate guys in the lottery or early in the first round, bring them in and develop them, and them turn into solid contributors. You haven't proven to be able to do that. Trey Murphy had pick 13, traded back, pick 17. You know what I'm saying? Jose, undrafted. Herb Jones, 2nd round. That's where your skill set lies, finding gems in the later rounds. You don't have to bring in another guy. You barely have any roster spots anyway. How are you going to play this guy and develop him and give him the nurturing and the stuff he needs? You're going to send him down to Birmingham, and it's going to be a whole shit show. It's going to be another shit show. It's going to be like what happened with Trey Murphy last season when you had him down in Birmingham when he should have been playing games instead of Gary Trent Jr., Tomas Satoransky, instead of guys like that. It's just don't do it. Just don't fucking do it. That's not what you're good at. You know what I'm saying? It's very important to know what you're good at. You know what I'm saying? I'm a good cook, but I'm not good enough to open a restaurant. With the Pelicans, look, you're good at drafting in the later rounds, but when the pressure's on and you want to start drafting in the earlier, I'm sorry, not the later rounds, later in the first and going into the 2nd round. But when the pressure's on and you have to hit a home run between pick 13 and pick 1, like that's not what you're good at. Like don't do that. That's not your thing. You know what I'm saying? You had the 4th pick, traded that. That pick turned to Darius Garland, and of course, yeah. Look, the Pelicans tried to move the 4th pick for Miles Turner, and they ultimately were able to get off Solomon Hill's contract, get the 8th pick, which turned to Jackson Hayes, and I think the other pick turned into Herb Jones. Okay, cool. So you got a 1st-round prospect in Herb Jones, probably top 12 prospect in Herb Jones. Okay, cool. But you missed on Darius Garland. You still missed. Herb Jones would have been there in the 2nd anyway. You didn't have to do that to get Herb Jones. You know what I'm saying? Tyrese Halliburton, you kind of, I don't even know if we attempted to trade up and get him, but you missed on Desmond Bane. You missed on, was Tyler Hero in that draft? Like Tyler Hero. Like, you just missed, man. You just missed so many times, bro. And I'm like those picks, like the opportunity cost of those picks, like really hurt this team to this day. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you miss on your lottery picks, you miss on 1st-round picks, those are players that you can't include in a trade that may add value to your trade. You know what I'm saying? The reason why, Phoenix is able to kind of, get a guy like Kevin Durant, aside from the fact that he, wanted to go there, was they hit on Cam Johnson. You know what I'm saying? They hit on Mike Howell. They hit, like, you know what I'm saying? That they were successful in those drafts. Like they hit on those guys. Look at how great Memphis is. They hit on their draft picks. So if they want to put a package together and then go get a superstar right now, They got tons of assets to work with because they hit on everything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Everyone doesn't have to hit on every single thing, but you have to hit on some of these motherfuckers so you can make packages surrounding them. Like, for example, Tyrese Halliburton. The Kings hit on Tyrese Halliburton. That's how you're able to go get Sabonis. You know what I'm saying? You think you calling up anybody with fucking Dyson Daniels and saying, look, Dyson, I want to build a trade package around Dyson Daniels and salary, and I'm going to give you a first. What's up with, I don't know who fucking good. What's up with Trae Young? Y'all want Dyson Daniels for Trae Young? Man, Atlanta first they're gonna look at the phone and then they're gonna say repeat that and make sure they heard you right. Then they're gonna hang up. Man, like stop doing that. Like that's wasting assets. Even if you trade the pick for future picks, do that. Like, but do not draft unless Scoot Henderson or one of those guys, you know, they hurt their ankle or something and they draft stock falls. You know, they stealing out the grocery store, some shit like that. Then you make the draft pick. Aside from that, trade the fucking pick, man. Get rid of the pick. The pick is a wrap. It's a dub. Trade the pick, bro. Trade it. We don't got time for this no more. You can't develop nobody anyway. Trade that motherfucking pick, man. God damn, cuz. Bro. Right. Now I want to talk about free agent acquisitions, right? I think it's very important that the Pelicans be realistic with their free agent acquisitions this season. Because we've seen before, guys don't want to come here. You got the Pelicans have been turned down by Malik Monk, Tim Hardaway Jr., and this past offseason, they were turned down by Dennis Schroeder. They were turned down. The Pelicans were looking at Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder said, nah, fuck out of here. Right, I'm going to LA. So I can't blame him. But it is what it is. That being said, I think when you look at a guy like Naz Reid, who's probably more interested in maximizing his value, getting the most money he can get, I think you have a really good shot at him. I also think another guy who people kind of sleeping on this dude, pause, but Corey Joseph. I think you need a traditional point guard in Corey Joseph who he can shoot the three. He's an NBA champion. He was on that Raptors team, so he has a championship pedigree. Well-respected professional guy, playing under Pop. He's a professional locker room leader. This locker room needs as many leaders as they can, especially if they can actually contribute on the floor. That way the burden isn't all the way on CJ or all the way on Larry, or all the way on Garrett Temple. You know, you need as many professionals in this locker room as possible. A guy who can even help Jose continue to progress. I think Corey Joseph will be an excellent addition to this team along with Naz Reid. We already know what Naz Reid brings. Tenacious rebounder, hell of a defender, can stretch the floor. And I really think if you have a big rotation of Naz Reid, potentially, I don't know if I trust Trae or Herb yet at the 5 as far as getting rebounds and stuff like that. I think rebounding is their weak suit at this point for all of our wings, actually. But if you have a rotation of Naz Reid, Carlo, and maybe one more big, and that other big can be, you know, the Dwight Howard maybe, you know, again, you have to be realistic about possible acquisitions. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where, you know, you got a Kyle Lowry situation or a Chris Paul situation where you're making these offers, but these guys aren't really coming here. They're just using you to boost up their, free agency market, boost up their value. So you don't want to get stuck in that situation again. So I think Corey Joseph, Naz Reid, and maybe even a guy like Thomas Bryant. Again, it's important that I have to make this clear. I'm not really that concerned about defense. Not that concerned about defense because I feel like the best defense this Pelicans team could have is an incredible offense. Those 3 players I named, they can contribute offensively. That's what I'm the most concerned about. And I think if you add Corey Joseph, pick and roll with Carlo and Corey Joseph, like that would be incredible. Like you're talking about alleys all day. Pick and roll with Zion, Corey Joseph, pick and roll with Trae and Corey Joseph. Like the possibilities are endless. Like you guys, you don't want to fall in love with the name. You want to fall in love with the player and the player's skill and what the player actually brings to the table, even the player's intangibles. And that's what Corey Joseph provides, in my opinion. Yo, I think the Pelicans may revisit that Raptors trade. You know, I've heard some interesting things. Shout out to my boy. You know what I'm saying? Heard some interesting things about what's going on with the Raptors. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Pelicans revisit that. You got Gary Trent Jr., you got OG Anunoby, you got Pascal Siakam. You got some guys out there who may be available, right? And I wouldn't be shocked to see the Pelicans revisit that. And hey, there's 2 ways to look at it, right? You can say, okay, OG has 1 less year on this contract. You know what I'm saying? So his value's down. Gary Trent, I believe he's going into his last year. I think he has a player option. He may opt out. Well, you know what? He may not opt out because he didn't get much PT down the run. So he may not have as good of a market as he initially expected. So he may stick with that contract and try to regain some value, right? So that's an expiring for them. And I think a couple of their assets may have decreased in value, especially if those assets want out of that situation, right? So the other side of that, though, is that this is such a weak free agency class that those guys may maintain some of that value. Teams may look at them as like, trading for a free agency acquisition. That is also a possibility. But looking at guys now, as far as y'all know, I think Gary Trent Jr. would be an excellent acquisition. Another guy who's really good in the pick and roll, can shoot off the dribble, create for himself, get to the rim. You know what I'm saying? Hell of a player. Then you got OG, hell of a player, defensive guy, prototypical 3-and-D guy. Think he got some Jaylen Brown in him. Can depending on how they round out this coaching staff, can continue to develop him, help hone his craft. Shout out to CJ also, wishing him a healthy surgery and a speedy recovery. Shout out to that brother. But that is a trade that could be revisited. And I'm really curious to see, like, if they can convince CJ to go to the bench. Because that is so critical at this point. If you can convince CJ to go to the bench, that would change a lot. That would help significantly, because you got a guy who's possible dropping 40 any given night coming off the bench. Maybe everyone takes turns. Maybe it's I know OG may want to be a more focal part of the offense, but maybe you got guys taking turns initiating the offense. Herbs can initiate the offense. We know what Zion could do. We know what Brandon could do. You know what I'm saying? And that allows Trae to just run around like Klay Thompson, getting open shots, just breaking down the defense, doing his thing. But it's all relying upon CJ agreeing to go to the bench. And I have a really hard time seeing CJ doing that, just because of what he went through this season, and pride and all that stuff. It would take, I don't even know who could talk to him. It would take like Isaiah Thomas. I'm talking about Zeke. It would take Zeke coming to talk to CJ like, look, you got to go to the bench, brother. You want to win? You got to come off that bench. You gotta let OG or Buddy Hield, whoever, you gotta let them start, and you come off the bench, and that's how you're gonna maximize your value at this point. So we shall see. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if the Pelicans revisit that OG Anunoby or Gary Trent Jr. trade, because they were this close. And the Raptors just pulled the rug from under them, like, nah, we ain't doing nothing. They stood pat and they went for it. And the way their season ended, I think they're going to break that team up. But again, we shall see. I see a lot of stuff happening with Trae Young. I know a lot of people don't like Trae Young, and it's crazy to me because you don't even fucking know him. Like, why don't you like him? But it's Trae Young's a hell of a player. He's a hell of a player, and he's a guy who doesn't really miss games. So those are two things you always have to look at when you're the Pelicans. Also, he's a distressed asset. If everyone loved Trae Young, if Trae Young was playing incredibly, if Trae Young got along with everyone, then you wouldn't be able to get him. That he wouldn't want to come to New Orleans, and they wouldn't be willing to get rid of him. Again, I'm going to say this again. I don't care about Trae Young being undersized and his defense and all that. Trae Young is a hell of a player. You know what I'm saying? Trae Young can fucking play, and he can shoot. And who's to say Trae Young has peaked? Who's to say he's reached his ceiling? Yeah, he's a lot smaller than Steph Curry was. A lot smaller than Steph Curry was. But that's not to say that he can't improve on defense like Steph Curry. Steph Curry improved tremendously on defense. You just need him to be Steph Curry light. Really, you just need him to be Trae Young. If he can just be Eastern Conference Finals Trae Young, for the majority of the time, you're good. Like, you ain't really tripping. So I think that's interesting. Now, what would it take to get Trae Young? I think you can get Trae Young with just picks and salary. If it's as bad as it's being reported, I think you can get Trae Young with just picks and salary. Snyder over there, shout out to him. He don't really play that shit. He's not really a person who's like, used to dealing with like certain type of personalities. So he's like probably a no nonsense kind of guy. And I think the last no nonsense kind of guy, Trae, got him fired. So shout out to Nate McMillan. So coming here, you can do whatever you want in this organization, Trae. So you'll fit right in, bro. Just come on over. You know what I'm saying? Welcome aboard. But can you imagine a starting five of Trae, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Brandon Ingram, Zion? Like, man, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. That would be like, come on, man. That would be phenomenal. That would be phenomenal. Like that team would probably score 160 points a night. So for people turning up their nose at Trae Young, you got to understand Trae Young is only available because he is a distressed asset. If Trae Young was perfect, the Pelicans wouldn't stand a chance. And that's the sad truth about it, but it is what it is. So personally, I would make the call. And I think Trae Young is going to maintain his value. You know, he's not like overpaid. He's going to maintain his value. The Pelicans got a couple overpaid people. If you want to just talk about results on the floor, I think Trae Young is going to maintain his value. If it doesn't work out, you package him, move him out to another team. You know, maybe some other team feels like he's the missing piece. He's the last thing that they need to put them over the top. But I certainly would not turn up my nose at Trae Young. And ask yourself this: would you turn up your nose at Jalen Brunson? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't turn up your nose at Trae Young. So that's how I feel about it. I think if there's any chance to go get Trae Young with just salary and picks, that's the first call you make. The Pelicans were already talking to Atlanta about John Collins. It's like, yo, you know, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? John Collins, really good player. But if you can get Trae Young, you probably leaving John Collins at the altar. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? All right, today I got to play Mythbuster. A little bit. The Pelicans were extremely close to trading Brandon Ingram this offseason. And everyone was okay with it. And when I say everyone was okay with it, like the entire front office and Willie Green was okay with it. They were like, yeah, let's do it. Now, it's for Kevin Durant. Let's keep that in mind. They wasn't trading Brandon for fucking bag of potato chips, like bag of Ruffles. This is Kevin Durant you're talking about. So you're gonna at least listen. You're gonna entertain the call. So that was a real conversation that was happening. And it wasn't that Griff said, no, I'm not trading Brandon. That didn't happen. I don't know how that narrative got out there, but that's not what, well, I do know how it got out there, but that's not what happened. That's not what happened, right? The Nets wanted Brandon and Zion, right? The Nets wanted everything. The Nets were never trading Kevin Durant to the Pelicans. It was never a real thing. They made an obscene counter offer. Well, not even counter offer. The Pelicans probably called and said, yo, what would it take to get Kevin Durant? And they said, give us Brandon Zion, you can have Kevin Durant. That's what happened. And the Pelicans said, nah, fuck all that. Kevin Durant was hell-bent on going to Phoenix. Like, that's what happened. It was never a real thing about them choosing Brandon over Kevin Durant. That wasn't a thing. They chose Brandon Zion over Kevin Durant. And I think long term that was the right decision. That was the right decision. And as far as Brandon being on the market, man, it just depends on what happens, because you hear a lot of stuff about Luka starting, like, possibly becoming available, and of course Zion and Luka have a great relationship off the court. And it's one of the few people I ever hear about Zion having any type of relationship with off the court. I think the only way you realistically see a Luka acquisition is if Brandon is on the table, you know. And should you trade Brandon for Luka? Yeah, absolutely. Hell fucking yeah, you should. Like Luka, Joel Embiid, yeah. Hell yeah. If you want to talk about Brandon, Jaylen Brown, then it's a conversation. You want to talk about Brandon, Trae Young, that's probably a no, right? Depending on, you know, what else is attached to that. But for Luka, Joel Embiid, MVP caliber players, yes, you do that, right? You do that. But do I think Brandon's on the market? Nah, I don't think so. I think the front office is displeased with him. Well, no, I know the front office is displeased with him and his handling of injuries and things of that nature. But I don't think they're ready to pull the plug quite yet. I think that, you know, at the earliest Brandon is moved, depending on who becomes available this offseason, I think the earliest Brandon is moved is probably at this upcoming trade deadline. And that's if they don't agree on that extension and, you know, things continue trending the way that they are trending, then I think you see that happen. But if it isn't a Luka or Joel Embiid type move, I don't anticipate Brandon is moved for a lateral player, unless that player is like super available. Like if Brandon is a B- player and you can get another B minus player, but that B minus player plays like 80% of the season, then you go get that guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or if you could trade Brandon for 2 C+ players, maybe you do that. Like, maybe you consider that 2 C+ players and draft picks. Maybe you consider that. So I don't think he's on the market, but I will say they they were ready to move the fuck on. And I don't know if those feelings are still there, but it's a very tumultuous situation that's going on. And trying to tell y'all this all season, things weren't good, and I don't know if they're going to repair themselves with the way Brandon closed out the season. If anything, that may make them even more frustrated. So we shall see. We shall see. But I would keep my eyes on Dallas, man, or keep my eyes on Jaylen Brown in the event that he doesn't make All NBA. But you'll hear about it here first if it does happen. I'm out. This podcast is sponsored by the Birds Law Firm, the official injury lawyers of Boo Crew Media, located at 918 Porter Street by the Superdome. Give them a call at 504-523-5413 if you or someone you know has been involved in an accident, and be sure to mention we sent you. Birds Law Firm, the official injury lawyers of Boo Crew Media. All right, is CJ McCollum on the trade market? No. I do not believe CJ is on the trade market unless he requests out. CJ behind the scenes has been a driving force for trying to hold guys accountable. He went out. He's a bit of a vocal leader, and he's gone out there and he's blood, sweat, and tears. He left it all out there on the court, regardless of what you think about the result. He played. I'm sure if CJ had the luxury of taking 2 months off and coming back, he probably would have looked a lot better if he had the luxury of not playing, the entire season. But he played 70-something games. That's incredible. Especially for a guy his age, battling through the multiple injuries that he battled with. I don't think anyone really knew about the shoulder until it was, reported. We all knew about the hand, of course. We knew about the significance of it, but we didn't know about the shoulder. And you at this point, you need CJ. CJ is probably the most bought in guy to the organization as far as, look, I want to be here. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. I'm going to hold guys accountable. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And he's showing and proving, publicly at that. CJ hasn't been shy. CJ has not been shy. And I think Griff really values and respects and appreciates that, because it's easier for CJ to be the bad guy versus, if you're Griff, you coming down there, kicking in the door, and you're like, hey, what the fuck is going on? Not that Griff hasn't done that. We'll probably talk about that on one of the shows, but not that Griff hasn't done that. But nah, man, you're not moving CJ. You're not moving CJ unless CJ requests out. And I think if CJ requests out, I think that'd be so damning for this organization, because CJ's a classy guy, and this hasn't always been a classy organization. So him moving out is kind of like an indictment on the organization, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure. And look, Portland, by all reports, was a bit of a cesspool itself. So if he was like, yo, this is worse than Portland, if he feels like that, then shit, you got to really, do some self-evaluation, because he's not the only one who feels like that. I'm telling y'all, everything doesn't make it to the masses, but, New Orleans really leaves, and, it's crazy, for as great as our food is, New Orleans sometimes leaves a bad taste in people's mouth, this organization particularly. And even the Saints, since Tom Benson has passed, and it really makes you question the leadership and ownership of both of these organizations, because you're starting to hear a lot of the things repeated across organizations. Like they're starting to have similar issues, and the common denominator with that is ownership. You know what I'm saying? So CJ, I highly doubt CJ is on the market at all unless he requests out. And I think by next year, going into that extension, I think CJ's contract becomes more valuable. It stops looking as ugly as some people feel like it looks. And if CJ embraces being a sixth man, now that would open a lot of doors. You know what I'm saying? That would be incredible, because you still got a guy like that who's willing to play through injury, show up every night, try to help hold his teammates accountable, and he's willing to take a role coming off the bench. What more could you ask for? That's impeccable leadership. So I don't think CJ is on the market, and nor should he be, unless Luka or somebody else available and they're like, yo, we want CJ. Then it's been real, CJ. It's been real, but you gotta go. Yo, I think one of the most important things, and I said this last offseason, they didn't fucking listen, but one of the most important things for this organization is reevaluating the staff and getting a better staff in the building, right? Got to get a better staff in this building. Willie Green needs a ton of support. He needs a ton of support. And, I believe, I'm not mistaken, I think the entire staff is in their lame duck year, meaning they're in the final year of their contract. Griff included. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Griff is in his final year. So they're going to put all their best feet forward. Is that how you say it? Did I say foots? They're going to put all their best feet forward to try to deliver a successful season. I just don't know if it's possible with this current staff. I think you need to hire, your future head coach and put him next to Willie, so he can kind of learn the ropes and things of that nature. I do think if you don't, I do think that with the news coming out about Collins and the analytics guy going to Alabama, I think that there's smoke. You know what I'm saying? There's smoke, and I'm sure Griff knows that this staff isn't good enough. I'm sure Willie knows that this staff isn't good enough. So I think moving forward, also, the next head assistant you hire or the next major hire for this coaching staff, that person needs to be groomed for being the next head coach. That doesn't mean you have to fire Willie. Maybe you promote Willie, give him a new title or something. But I think next year, whoever the major hire, major addition for the staff, I think that person will probably be the actual coach, and I think Willie Green would be the head coach in title. You know what I'm saying? I think you're ushering that guy in to try to usher Willie Green out, not necessarily out of the organization, because there are people who like Willie Green. I don't know if they respect him, but they certainly like him. And, everybody likes a substitute teacher. And so they're going to probably maybe kick Willie Green up, you know what I'm saying? And I think that might be the best thing for Willie Green. Willie Green, gracious guy, professional, class act. And I think that's what you need in the organization. You always want that. You see what's happening with Elvin Gentry and the Kings right now. And that, I think that originally that was the plan for Elvin Gentry here. But yeah, I think you need critical staff changes, man. You really do. You the stuff. I mean, come on, bro. Come on, bro. This staff is probably the worst staff in the NBA. Like hands down. Considering the amount of talent this staff is working with, I think this is far worse than the Houston staff. You know what I'm saying? Maybe this staff is running a race with Doc Rivers and his staff in Detroit. Those are probably the three worst staffs in the NBA, because everybody knows Doc Rivers ain't good. And Willie Green, he just got a lot of Doc Rivers, early Monty Williams in him, and it's just bro, it's time. It's time to move on from this staff. It really is. Again, everyone's going into their lame duck year, so they can't afford to fall flat on their face. They can't. So they're gonna throw everything at the wall to try to get that money, as they should. But it's time to move on from the staff. It really is. It's time to move on. Credit to the roster. I think the roster succeeded this season as far as they overachieved. They pushed it to where they were still playing meaningful games at the end of this season. But this front office and this staff, I'm not even gonna say front office. This staff did this roster a total injustice this season. Playing Kyra for the first time in over a month, and a winner go home. No, I'm not even gonna say winner go home. In a sudden death playing game, you play Kyra for the first time in over a month. You play Jax for the first time in over a month. Come on, man. What the fuck are we doing here? Man? This staff failed these guys miserably, and it's unfair to Brandon. It's unfair to Zion. It's unfair to CJ. It's unfair to everyone who showed up to work and played and delivered when they were on the floor. It's totally unfair, and you gotta move on from the staff, and that's my opinion. I'm gonna say no. Really, I'm gonna say hell no, just because of this, right? Just because of this. When Zion is healthy, which isn't very often, right? But when he is healthy, he's probably a top 10, top 7 player in the NBA, right? You don't just readily trade that unless you're getting back at least a top 12 player. That's not what you do. You just don't do that. You rarely ever win those trades. The only way you do that is if Zion says matter of factly, yo, I don't want to be here. right? And even then, it's like, well, you got 5 years on the contract with no options, so you might want to get comfortable. You know what I'm saying? You might, don't sell your house just yet. So, nah, of course you don't put Zion on the market unless someone comes and they just like, they blow you away with an offer like, hey, what you want to do, Joel for Zion straight up? Like, yeah, let's do that. Or even Luka for Zion straight up. Like you strongly consider that. Like, you know what I'm saying? But nah, you don't put Zion on the market because you're not necessarily going to be able to replace him. I don't think this team would be very good. Look, Zion didn't play many games this season. He played 29. If you replace Zion with let's say a C+ player, and let's say that C+ player played, let's say he played 70 games. This team probably isn't sniffing the play-in. This team probably doesn't do nothing. Like, you know what I'm saying? This team probably still isn't playing meaningful games at the end of the season, right? You just got a guy who can single-handedly make up for how terrible this staff is, how questionable the supporting cast is, and he did it alone. He did it a lot of that without CJ. He did it totally without Brandon. So you got to take that into account. You better try to fix him. You don't throw away a Ferrari because they got a motherfucking scratch on it. You better buff that shit out. You better go to every body shop you can find, no pun intended. So nah, you don't move Zion unless you're totally blown away by the offer, which I don't know if I really see any. I'm sure if an organization was trying to blow it up, they would at least see what they can get. They're like, oh, you want to trade a Zion? But I don't even think realistically Zion's value is at its peak anymore right now, considering his injury history and the off the court stuff. If right now, in fact, I think Zion is in a prove it year. Like, this motherfucker doesn't prove it yet. He gotta show up and show out. He needs to pull a total Joel Embiid and show up and just be the dominant player we saw before. Whatever happened to his hamstring, I can't even say what happened to the hamstring because I've heard a couple of things. Some of them were totally discouraging, right? Discouraging from a medical standpoint, and I don't necessarily mean the medical staff. They were discouraging from a medical standpoint, and I've heard that how he responded to some of those things were disappointing. Again, Zion, he gets disappointed, man, and he finds comfort in food like a lot of us. And it's kind of sad because you think about it, dang, he's such a young guy. But it's like, bro, at some point that light has to come on. You have to want it for yourself. Can't make the club in the tub. And when you find yourself in the tub, you can't have a motherfucking Mountain Dew with you. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can't have a Mountain Dew and chips with you in the tub. You gotta stay disciplined, bro. You gotta trust the process, man. And shout out to Joel Embiid. You gotta trust the process, bro. Everyone else believes in you. You just have to believe in you enough to do it for yourself. And I think that day will come. I am confident that will happen. But again, you gotta want it for yourself, bro. This podcast is sponsored by the Birds Law Firm, the official injury lawyers of Boo Crew Media, located at 918 Porter Street by the Superdome. Give them a call at 504-523-5413 if you or someone you know has been involved in an accident. And be sure to mention we sent you. Birds Law Firm, the official injury lawyers of Boo Crew Media.